and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad, joined by Matt and Shad. So, gentlemen, how are we doing this evening?
Oh, I'm sure I could find something to complain about, but I'd have to work at it.
Yeah, so
I'm doing good.
Good. Sorry for jumping in there. Yeah, gave me a pause. Okay,
No problem.
so we have a big show for everyone tonight. We are going to be watching. The main topic of the evening is going to be watching some Memphis, which is the show's named after. But we're going to continue with the format we tried last week. I thought we liked that pretty well with too many topics to start. So we're going to start with the fun, easy one, and this is primarily aimed at Shad. So this is meant to torture him terribly. So Shad, you have a choice. You can your choice is this. You have Ricky Morton and Bobby Eaton, and you have to choose which of them you would tag with and which of them you would wrestle in like a singles match.
Okay, no, I have an answer for this. I have a great answer for this. I would want to have a singles match with Bobby Eaton because it would be fun and easy and look great and all that sort of stuff, and I'd want to tag with Ricky Morton so I could get that hot tag, come in, House of Fire, pop, 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 knock him down, go harder than Robert Gibbs never did, high kick, elbow, forearm, lariat, there you go. Kind of overly fired up for the answer there, but I mean, to take the hot tag from Ricky Morton, man, how could you pass up on that opportunity?
Yeah, I thought that was the direction you were going to go with it.
Plus, that's way the hell easier. You know, I stand there in the corner and I shout, Ricky! And I reach for the tag and Ricky reaches for me and he goes, oh! And then the guy cuts him off.
Well, and you gotta just stand there afterwards while he does his whole like spiel because he's such a good promo.
Well, the funny truth is, and every one of us, after we would have a match, we'd all say the same thing. We'd say, man, being on the apron, because if you were on the apron, the way that all of us took it is your job is to be the hype man on the inside. Being on the apron wears you out faster than being in there because you've got to keep the energy up and waving and running around and shouting all that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
it's not so much about it being easier. It's just taking the hot tag from Ricky Morton.
There's like a fan cam of like a European tour and like it's a tag and Undertaker's literally like running between the two ring posts, like smacking the things. Like, man, he's blowing up worse on the ring apron than he is when he's gonna go in there.
Stomping on the ring steps and slapping the turnbuckle and running back and yeah,
I've seen that one.
So our second topic, we might get.
I just blew the first one up too easy.
Well, no, I mean that was meant to be quick.
Okay,
but
I think I would agree. Shad, I would actually agree with your logic. Like, I mean, you're gonna have a good match either way, but the idea that's like, I mean, I never was a wrestler like you were, but if I was, like, there were certain things that I would want to have like bucket lists based upon guys that I love, like being in a tag with Ricky Morton and doing a hot tag with Ricky Morton would be like bucket list. A couple other things personally that'd be bucket lists, and obviously one's like retired now, but I would want to take like a stinger splash. Like I'd love that. He can then like I'd be like Effie, splash me again, Mr. Steve.
Just get beat by Sting. Just getting beat by Sting. I'd take it.
Oh, it could be a 30-second match. I wouldn't care. Even like 60-year-old Sting. Anyway, and the other thing I actually want I guess in theory would be possible if I was a worker. But I would love to take a power slam from Dustin Rhodes because it's just so smooth and
snaps right over.
Snap power slam, yeah. But yeah, but I agree. Like that'd be an awesome. Like Bobby Eaton was an amazing worker, so you'd have a great match with him. But taking the hot tag from Ricky, that'd be.
And you could learn so much from having a match with Bobby Eaton. Just, I mean, even if you didn't talk about it beforehand, you go out there and you do stuff, and over the course, if you talk to him after, like, Mr. Eaton, can you please help me understand? Because I want to understand why you made the choice you made when you made him, that sort of stuff. Like, to really, to sit under the learning tree, and that sort of thing. God, that would be unreal.
Well, and he
Oh.
he came off or was known to be like a really nice guy, so he's probably humble
Mhm.
enough that he'd be like, "Oh, do you really want to hear what I have to say?" It's like, "Yeah, I do.
Well,
Tell me."
Shad, you
So,
met
sir,
him,
I'll
right?
give you my payoff tonight for it. Would you like
Yeah.
a hot dog with mustard or without?
I thought you met him once, didn't you, Shad?
My first night in the business, I sat next to him in the locker room, offered him my chair, and he said, "No thanks, I've got it," and picked up another one. Just outstanding.
That's cool. Okay,
Because
so
of Bobby Eaton.
our next topic. This is I should have remembered. I think it was a Fed pillar that came up with this, but it was an interesting subject, and I was actually surprised at the reception they got. So, the question they asked in a tweet was, "Where would Triple H be on your GOAT list?" Which I hate that question because he's not a good wrestler. He if you look at like the totality of his career, like his angles and stuff missed more than they hit. And like there is that running gag where I think after the Daniel Bryan mania, like it was always the joke of, "Oh, here's the annual Triple H angle that's going to get 30 minutes on Mania and land like a wet fart." But so it was like,
So,
where is he on your GOAT list? And where I was actually kind of surprised is most of the responses were he wouldn't be.
mhm.
Mm.
My I had a friend on social media who put something. Sorry, excuse me. That I thought was just great. He said, "Quit calling things the GOAT. Say it's my favorite and move on." And I was just like, "That's yes, thank you." If you want a GOAT list, then I have to feel that number one, you have to say, is this personal or technical? Because there is a difference. And then second, no, he's nowhere near any GOAT list of mine. It's just maybe backstage politicking, but that would be it.
I mean, we literally on one of the matches tonight we'll get to, we watched someone that is like legitimately a GOAT contender, and
Mm.
I came away from that, and it won't be a shock when we get to it, but I've literally seen probably hundreds of his matches, and I still watch that match, and I'm like, oh yeah, he is awesome.
Well, yeah, the match which we'll get to, I had never seen before, but yeah, and it's a really good match, but in some respects, it's almost nothing special for this individual, and that's only because like he could go out there and have this quality of match like in his sleep, like he like that. An easy night for him was to have a good match, but just almost like go through the motions, and he would still have a great match. But I think my answer, I could talk like an hour about where I think Triple H. I guess the short answer is like he's not on my GOAT list. And I mean this seriously. I know we bag on him, I think with good reason, but I would not list him certainly overall, because as a thought experiment, I've actually thought like, could I make like 100 best wrestler list? And I probably could, but I'd be leaving off people that should, because if you actually want to be fair, it's like, think about this. Like if you want to do just 100 wrestlers and you're be leaving people off, but it's like, well, maybe I should include some on that list that are from like the modern era, because I think there's some guys that could fit, like Danielson, I think could fit, Omega
Yeah,
could
definitely.
fit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Guys that even if you want to just limit it to like the last like 40 years, 50 years, maybe, like you'd have to list like a certain number of 80s, 90s guys.
Well,
Okay.
but then you also where you get in, but then where I always struggle with it because PWO did this and I just didn't do it. I participated when they did matches, but where I noped out was, well, okay, so 100 best wrestlers. Well, I need to watch old Lucha because those guys, like, we watched like one match with like Sangre Chicana, and I'm like, okay, well, I love that performance. I bet that guy would be in contention for my thing. And it's like, well,
that's the thing. You could easily picking 100 people. You'd almost have to be like, oh, well, I can pick probably like 20 guys just from the 80s.
and
But
it's
then
like, And it's like, well, I don't know much about shoot style. Like, I
Gotta
need to
pick
watch.
20 guys from the 90s. All right, that's 40.
Yeah.
What about Lucha? I could probably pick 20 guys from Lucha. That's 60. 20 guys from Japan.
Yeah.
20
And,
guys from Japan, and that's 80. That's your 80% there. And of the other 10, it's like, well, maybe I pick some guys whose heyday was like in the 70s, even if I want to push it back like 50 years. And then it's maybe 10 of those guys, maybe 10 modern guys. I have 100 people, and I'm sure that I've left off people that probably might arguably deserve to be on the list.
And
My,
But you
I was going to say my approach on it is going to, if they're like, 100 GOAT wrestlers, I'm going to be like, no. Okay, if you want 100 American, okay, we can talk about that. But even there, I have to draw a line because there is a big difference that happened, like the transition happened in the 80s, the pre-80s style and the post-80s style. And the pre-80s style being much, the much more old school, that sort of thing, that just, it doesn't grab me as much. So, if I'm going to make a GOAT list, that's about where I'm going to start pulling people from. And I have, like you just said, Matt, I have to separate it by region. I can't just do everyone ever for all time.
I think, truthfully, we could do a list of just 100 people that have been on this show, and I don't even think Triple H would get in there. But you're
even
you're also missing. Well, I was gonna say the other problem with Japan though is there's Joshi workers because like if you're doing a top 100, like Bull Nakano has to be in there, like Aja Kong has to like creep in there. So you're already, that's a can of worms coming in, and then things like shoot style. Then you're talking about like World of Sport from Britain. And then there's like shit I don't know anything about, like German, like CWA, like stuff like
I haven't seen a lot of him, but like Rollerball Mark Rocco, fantastic worker. Like probably to a certain style. I'm sure people like Will Ospreay probably has seen Mark. Like he's seen him and he's probably been at least somewhat influenced by him because in Rollerball I believe maybe he was the original Black Tiger in Japan. Like he was one of them, I think.
He might
like
have been.
He was
Eddie
he did
was
a lot of stuff.
But I don't know if Eddie was the original. No, Eddie was one.
No, he was like number 2, I think.
And then
I think
Silver King was one, I think.
Yeah, I think Rollerball might have actually been like the original one.
Okay.
But anyway, even if you want to be charitable, let's say like I definitely wouldn't put him 100 of all time, 100 best of all time. Even if you want to be charitable, I'd be like, well, what about the WWF/WWE?
Nope. You wouldn't even make
And I would have to say, I probably wouldn't even, because then it's almost like you have to debate. Sorry.
He wouldn't even crack the top 100 for me in WWE.
Who would you base it just on the work of people, just on their WWF/WWE career? And by say that, I don't mean like they were in, because technically people who deserve to probably be on the 100 greatest of all time list, like Harley Race, Terry Funk, they deserve to be on that list. But if you just put just their WWE careers, like their WWE career, King Harley Race and Terry Funk's
Chainsaw Charlie,
his time in the 80s plus like Chainsaw Charlie,
yeah,
neither one had a lot great like WWE career. So if it's just like you count Terry Gordy, here's another Terry Gordy.
Or
his WWE career was as the Executioner.
I'll use a great one.
I don't know. He'd be on my 100. I'm not sure. Maybe. That's the thing. But go ahead.
I'll use a great one so let's take Bob Orton Jr. So if you're just going by WWE list, Bob Orton Jr. wouldn't be over like Triple H for me, just because he didn't work that hard. But now take Bob Orton Jr. as an entirety of his career, he would be over Triple H for me.
Yeah. If you want to at least be fair and be like the people from the last, let's say like 50 years just in the WWE, regardless if they were in the WWE like 6 months, versus like you're just going to count them as a wrestler or their entire span of their career, he still wouldn't be top 100 to me.
I mean, I would need to actually sit down and really think about it, because he might squeeze, like, I would say there's a slight chance he might, like, sneak in like the bottom 15. He wouldn't be top 50. He might squeeze into the top 100. Like, I'm not going to say definitively he wouldn't, because like I said, if I really got into the weeds, he might squeak in. I think the problem I have with him in general, though, is if you're talking about when his ring work was good, it was about a year and a half, and it's really remembered through rose-colored glasses because there was like a 6-month period in that 18 months where he really didn't do much. Like that second run of like that second half of like 2000, like he wasn't really doing anything that great in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not over for like his first couple title reigns. Like it really took Mick Foley making him. And then you're talking about the Reign of Terror, just things like cutting Randy Orton off at the knees repeatedly, and so I was trying to figure out like what an analog I thought that he would be for me, like of someone who, and I don't like it very much, but like I think Shane Douglas is about like where he kind of fell for me.
In terms of like ring talent?
In terms of like where I would comp them on like a greatest of all time list. Because Shane Douglas would not be super high on my list because we were taking in like quality of work, blah, blah, blah. Know, Shane Douglas had some counterproductive ECW title reigns, you know, stuff like that.
I think I would, that's not I don't know if that's the analogy I would make, but it's actually not a bad one. Triple H. Here's the thing about Triple H. I don't think he's a good worker, and do the metrics of how you view a good worker. There's many you could come up with, but obviously, one of the prevailing ones, the oldest one, is the old like, you know, carry a broomstick to a good match.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously we talked about it a lot of times on the show, but you know, Kenny Omega, who was completely bodily broken down, carried a damn near comatose Rich Swann to a good match, almost single-handedly by himself.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's that, obviously, but I don't know that I could really say. And I watched a lot of Triple H back in the day. Like, I don't know if there's really many instances. I can't think of one, so that's how rare they are. I can't think of a situation where it's like, oh, this like poor worker, Triple H like elevated them to a good match. Like, I don't know that that's ever happened. Like, I don't think he was that type of worker. I will say
there might be
I
one
think
just
Triple H
based on like
statistically.
Yeah, statistically, there's got to be at least one.
If you've worked like 1,000 matches in your career, then
like Kane and Albert had that like just mind-bogglingly good match. So I mean, I'm gonna be nice to him and say I'm guessing there's like once or twice where he did carry someone.
I think maybe the best way to talk about Triple H's in-ring stuff is to call it very steady, but a little above average.
That's fair. But I think where he really gets into trouble as a worker, and he got into trouble as a worker, is one, he bulked up too much. So that really hampered him in the ring. And secondly, he's a terrible judge of his abilities because his insistence on working long. So like I'm gonna bring stand-up comedy into this. So Triple H is a guy that thought he was a headliner with 60 minutes of material when he was working with like the mid guy that has like 20, that's supposed to go on for like 15 to 20 minutes. Like that was his biggest problem. He was trying to stretch out like 20 minutes of content to like 60 minutes.
And to your point, when he bulked up, he slowed way the hell down. Because he went from...
severely hampered his mobility, yeah.
He went from... For example, you know, in his DX days, you'd see him move on the ropes pretty well. His leaping knee strike could get some height to it, and he would travel with it. You know, he would travel across the ring and meet you, but after he bulked up, he'd just kind of hop in the middle of the ring and lift his leg, and you would bump off of it. And so, bulking up too much, and in doing so, inviting more injury.
And
Because
I would say he never evolved much with his style. Like he never, like, for as much as like Cena had some issues as like a worker, like Cena always was incorporating some stuff. He changed up what he was doing. Like I kind of liked when he was the U.S. champion. And
oh
like,
yeah, he brought in new spots.
and he was doing
He
all
brought
the
that.
like, I'm gonna show you young pups, I can do all your fancy shit just as well. Like I thought that
He
was
busted out Code Reds. Here, good example for Cena. There was a stretch where he was doing a Hurricane, trying to make it 6 moves of doom instead of 5, and it just didn't work, so he quit doing it. Like, he actually took a chance to add something into his standard pattern. It didn't work, and so he quit doing it. But Triple H's stuff has seemed to... Like, his going long wasn't even him doing more stuff, it seemed like. It was just him going slower and padding more between it.
yeah, and like even like Undertaker evolved his style a lot. Like you would get like the Mania stuff towards the end where Taker was just like, he was just in his like, oh, this is the fifth Kiss retirement tour and we're just playing the hits. Like he was doing that towards the end, but like I feel like as much as we're a little hard on him at times, like he kind of had earned that right at the end. And like he was
I
only
think that's
working
fair.
like a couple times a year, and like if you're only working 3 times a year, people don't want you. People just want you to do say the line.
spots.
Yeah.
Do the deal. People
Yeah.
want, yeah. You go to, we'll go back to stand-up comedians there, Brad. It's like you see Brian Regan and you want to hear Hooked on Phonics, or you see Jim Gaffigan and you want to hear Hot Pockets. Like they've done it a million times. They don't want to do it, and they want to do something different. But if they get towards the end of the show and somebody goes, hold it, and Jim Gaffigan's going to go, because that's part of what brings people there,
Side note that
Yeah.
it means nothing, but to the whole point of it, like 10 years ago maybe, like have you ever heard of the Made in America Festival? It's like this festival they do every, like, I think it's more like around Labor Day. It's in September in Philadelphia. It's run, or if it's still,
Wait,
they still do it.
is this the Bill Burr special?
No.
Oh,
no.
okay.
It's
All right.
it's like this is a music festival that
Oh, okay.
they used to
I'm
do.
sorry.
Maybe they still do it. It's actually run by Jay-Z. It's a
Okay.
couple times, like he's like headlined, or Beyonce. But my wife and I went like 10 years ago because like one of the nights, like the headlining act was Nine Inch Nails, like one of my all-time favorite bands. And we had neither my wife or I had ever seen them live. And we saw them, and it was a lot of people like our age or older. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, because they grew up with them in the 90s too. But like they had like a new album at the time, or newish album. And Trent Reznor played like a couple songs from it, which is pretty good. But then he literally got on the mic. He's like, "Yeah, thanks for letting us play that. I know you guys don't care about that. Now we're playing the hits." And like they just played like all their big hits, like 12 of them or more in a row, and everyone was just like going crazy because it's like they knew the assignment.
Yeah.
It's bad when a band doesn't do that. Like I've gone to ones where they've been like, and now this hit from our new album, and you just hear the crowd go, oh.
All right, guys, bathroom break.
Yeah.
I took my dear darling wife, who is one of the biggest Garth Brooks fans you are ever going to meet. I took her to see him in concert twice. And at the very beginning of it, he comes out there and everybody's all fired up, and he did like maybe 2 songs from his new album, and then he's like, "So okay, now I know why you guys are here. I know what it is you want to hear." And he just launched into the playlist of, his hits. And that's I was kind of like, oh, because there was one off of Scarecrow I really wanted to hear, but that wasn't one of his big hits, so he didn't play it. But he's like, he did a couple of them, and then he's like, okay, same thing. You guys want to hear the hits? I'm going to play the hits. You're going to get what you paid for.
Yeah, I think it's different though. If you're like, let's say if you go see, they're more obscure, but if you go see Ghost, and they're playing a lot of stuff off their new album, it's like, well, they're still an act in like the prime of their career, so like that's kind of how that goes. They're touring for that. But if you're like, if you're kind of like a band that it's like your hardcore fans from like 20 years ago are coming, like don't play your, like get that crap out of the way. Like,
I mean, you can do a little bit of it and sprinkle it in, but you know, you get to a point. You mentioned Kiss, Brad, where it's like, the fans are like, I want to rock and roll until a reasonable hour. You know, play Detroit Rock City, play rock and roll all night. I can go home.
Do you know how old I was when they did their first retirement tour? I think I was 17. I think they finally did stop, didn't they?
I don't know. I kind of quit paying attention to them.
Yeah, no, there was like one where they're like, no, we swear to God, this is like the last time we're doing it. It's like, okay.
But to bring that back around, yeah, this is like going to see. I'm going to try and do a good analogy here. I'm not good with doing this with musicians. Never mind. I can't put the analogy together on the spot. I'm not going to drag out time to do it. It's Triple H is not going to be GOAT for anybody who's not having recency bias and or OMG Papa H M greatest booker thought processing. It's not going to be there. He worked with a lot of big name guys, and he was the phrase from one of those people that we don't take all that seriously anymore is he's not the guy that makes the money. He's the guy that works with the guy to make the money.
That's actually like the quote that I think encapsulates his whole career pretty succinctly.
Yeah.
And I think he hates that.
He
well, he doesn't we know what pisses me off about him, and it shows what kind of a dick face he is like he really tries to diminish how much Mick Foley made him. Because he's an ungrateful piece of shit.
He was not established. He was the guy who was holding the title, but everyone's like, eh. Like, Foley made him main event. And Foley did that very consciously. That was his goal through that. To dump on that is
such a
incredibly ungrateful. Incredibly ungrateful.
So do we want to move on to our main topic of the night, or does anyone else have a comment on the...
I was just going to wrap it up, I was just going to say, like, if I want to be charitable to him, I'll say, like, he got good, and I don't mean good in, like, good, but I mean he got good in terms of, like, experienced or skilled at working essentially like the WWE main event style. He got fairly good at that format, but
I don't even think
I've thought about that because there are.
I would even think
like
guys. Cena was better at the WWE style than he was.
There are other guys who are better than him. Just because someone got good at the style doesn't mean that there are people who did it who did it better. Like there are people who did it better, and there are people that are there now in the main event scene now. I think that they're decent workers, or if you take them out of like the WWE environment and put them in a different environment, how would they do? And I think they would sometimes have like varying level of success. Like Cody Rhodes is obviously like champ now, but he went outside the WWE system and had decent success. I feel he is both not as good as some people hype him up to be, well, better than people hype him up to be. He's not necessarily the 3-star savior, as you got called. I think he can be a little bit better than that, but he's also not like he's going to get 5-star bangers out of Cody Rhodes all the time.
He had that like 2-year span where I thought he was really good, and then he kind of he fell off from that in AEW because he wasn't doing it full time. And like I don't know what it is about WWE, but like the quality of work I feel like match work in WWE, I feel like has just been kind of steadily declining from where I would say they had a good formula, and like the matches were pretty good until like 2020 or so. And I think it's slowly kind of declined because their roster has both gotten older, but more in it. Like, so their roster is in, I think, a bad composition state because you have a lot of the rosters getting older and physically declining, but then the other part of your roster is young and inexperienced.
Yeah.
And they're like, not having a lot of crossover in there.
Yeah. And you don't have those like I think Shad's called them carpenters before. You don't have those carpenters in the middle that are still like in their physical prime that have experience that can kind of like
Well,
get the best out of
a-
everyone.
and the game that they were playing for a long time, and that's part of why people think that Triple H is like some sort of booking genius when he's not, where he just stole guys from the indies, PWG, Ring of Honor, like guys in their prime. I mean, they've been around for years. They're also getting older, and I think like there's a certain degree of like on the downward
Oh yeah, a lot of
slope of
like
like
AJ
he,
Styles, Kevin Owens. I think
well, yeah,
Sammy's
he's
still.
Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, I feel, are two guys that are still like good workers, but I think that their peak years, their best years, are have passed them.
Yeah.
Like they're on the decline, and you can actually notice it if you actually watch their work pretty closely.
I think the
But they're
problem.
still good workers. But I mean, he got them what, like 2015 or something like that, where it's like, oh my God, NXT is so good. It's like, yeah, you got the best workers in the world doing it. Now you have NXT where it's like, here's a 22-year-old college person that we recruited. Like they were a college athlete. They've been working the business like 6 months. In
Yeah.
some cases, like, and statistically this is going to be the case, but like every like 25th one of them, maybe you get like, oh, this guy's actually good. He's actually picking it up, or this girl, like they're picking it up really well. But yeah, it's like 1 out of 25. So what are you gonna do with the other 24? Like they can be like awful, just absolutely awful to like okay.
They
And
have a
WWE
weird.
Machine like can maybe make them stars of a sort, but they're not gonna necessarily have like longevity.
They have a weird thing going on though, where like even their good prospects have like kind of like hit a ceiling, and they're not like the can't misses. Like I'd say Braun Breaker and like Tiffany Stratton. Like
Hmm.
in some cases they both regressed, but like they have not like I don't feel like translated super well to the main roster, and like they really have a lot of holes in their game.
I won't comment on Stratton. I haven't seen enough Tiffany Stratton to have an opinion. But for Breaker, and it's not like I've seen a lot of Breaker either, but they pushed him too hard, too fast, which kind of set him in, I don't want to say a rut, but kind of set up an MO for him when he should not have had one set up yet. He should not have had like a standard sequence yet because he still should have been trying out stuff and trying to do new things. And once he hit that point,
No
they're like,
evolution.
"Oh, okay. Well, hey, you've got your regular moves now. That's great. All right, let's you just do that." And it's like, really don't like that. Um, it's like there's been a lack of a push for him to improve, and
think
I really
I think
got
the
to
problem
improve.
I think the problem they have, and they won't do it, is when you're taking them and you're building them from the ground up. I think it hampers them. Like they need to go on learning excursions. They need to be exposed to different styles. I think they're kind of doing that with Impact and All Japan a bit, but like they've needed to do that for a long time because I think we're Braun especially because I don't know as much about Tiffany is I think where some of his limitations are coming in is he doesn't have that like diverse range of experience the guys got on the indies. Like he didn't have to be like, okay, well I'm going to New York and I'm working this style. Like, oh hey, this like indie and like bumfuck Alabama wants me to come in and I need to like make sure I work a different style because that's a different culture of fan. Like he doesn't really have that. He's worked in this like homogenized oh
Yeah,
we just do our McDonald's assembly line wrestling that our fans like. And I think that's
it,
hurt him.
I think one thing that also does not happen enough is that sometimes in order to be able to grow and experience and change, you have to you have to bomb. You have to just utterly fail, and you have to be trying to, or you're like, hey, we're gonna throw you out there with Graps McGee, and it's like Graps isn't any good. It's like, well, that's your problem. Figure it out. Like, I'm not saying set them up to fail, but you have to give them challenges to try and push them to do bigger, better. Like, to learn how to think on their own. Because it's like we had this issue of like nobody having the experience to call it in the ring or having the wherewithal to do it. And let's just say that there's a production screw up and the referee's earpiece isn't working, and you're out there. What are you gonna do when the wheels fall off the wagon? Are you gonna grab a chin lock and talk it out? Are you gonna just start doing stuff, or are you gonna be like, and everyone knows that you don't know what to do? You
I
gotta
think
go. Sometimes you gotta go out there and suck. Sometimes you gotta work with someone who sucks. And then sometimes you just gotta push and try something different, and maybe it won't work. You know what? Fine.
I think you
But
also sometimes have to like because their rehearsing I think really hampers them long term. I think there has to be like, okay, you have 10 minutes. Like, what are we doing? Figure it out. Like, this is who's winning.
hmm that was why and I know I've said this on here before, but I very intentionally in my career because when I started out, my tag partner BJ liked to lay everything out, and I hated it because I out there doing stuff I wouldn't remember, or it'd be like, well, this doesn't seem like the right time to do it. Instead of, um, and so what I would do is I was like, all right, we got our open, we got our cutoff, we got our finish. We'll just fill the rest in as we go. Because then, first of all, it gives the other guy, freedom to do stuff that's good for him. We've got a basic structure. If I'm doing a speech or public speaking or something like that, I don't write it out. I do bullet points. I fill it in as I go because I want to see how well it's working. And if they're loose and they're laughing and they're having a good time, then I'll joke around with it a little bit. And if they're not, then I'll stay straight to the point.
Okay. So
Sorry, I went for a rant there.
oh no, you're good. So what we're doing tonight is we're doing just a random selection of various matches and some angles from Memphis, and it's quite an enjoyable array of stuff. So these are kind of broken up into what I'll say is two sagas and then some rando stuff. So let's start the night off with what I like to call the Jimmy Valiant hates televisions television saga. So this is gonna be we're gonna go kind of in we'll go in order with this. So the first part of this is it's a battle royal for the new TV title, and the signifier of the TV title is you have a television set. And I don't know if it was color or black and white. They did not say. I'm guessing since it was like 80 or 79, it was probably color, but who knows?
It didn't exactly look like a super high end
No, it wasn't like
television set for that era either.
Yeah. So this is there are quite a few names in here. So like Tojo Yamamoto, Jimmy Valiant's in there, Koko Ware's in there, Ricky Morton, Bill Dundee, then Tommy Rich comes out, Bobby Eaton was there, Guy Mitchell, who was Jerry Valiant in the WWE, is a random one, and there were a couple other people I don't remember who they were. So this is pretty much like a standard battle royal. They do a lot of focus on Jimmy Valiant doing his thing, because essentially you're supposed to think that Jimmy Valiant's gonna win, and so it's down to it's him and Koko Ware, and then who was the heel left? Who was it?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I watched all of this stuff in one go, so my memory is not what it should be.
Wasn't it Danny Davis?
Yes, it was Danny Davis. Good call.
Which I think is different than the WWF's Dangerous Danny Davis, if I'm not mistaken. I think, right? There was like a different There was like a
Yeah,
Memphis Danny
that's the
Davis, I think.
that Danny Davis, the ref, is different. This Danny Davis was an SMW, and he is the Danny Davis that I believe owned OVW for a long time.
Yeah.
So this is so it's down to them, and they're kind of double teaming Davis, and they do the old spot of they messed up and Koko hit Jimmy Valiant, and Danny Davis immediately capitalizes on it and pins Jimmy Valiant, and so then Koko eliminates Danny Davis, and he's your new TV champion. And Jimmy Valiant like loses his cool and beats up Koko Ware and then smashes the TV set, which was hilarious. And so this is from the same episode. So this leads into Tommy Rich is a heel here, and in the Battle Royal he actually just refuses to get in the ring. And gets counted out, which was an interesting call. So then we go to his mom coming out, and she's kind of doing well, I don't know why people don't like my boy, and you just don't understand and stuff. And then
so just to add context, like when I watched this, I did not have that backstory because I thought based upon like historically, like Tommy Rich was like the face. That's what I assumed. And Jimmy Valiant was coming out like talking shit to his mom that he was like the dastardly heel, shit talking this like old lady. But because I thought Tommy was the face here, like I was like, this is actually why would anyone decide this is like a good idea? Like he's going out there and his mom is like defending him, and it's like, oh poor Tommy, like he said, Mama, they don't like me, like they don't want me as their champion, as their hero. And it's like, I'm like, he comes off, pardon my language, he comes off as like the biggest pussy. Like you got your mom coming out there to like fight your battles for you, like talk you up. I didn't realize that he was supposed to be like a heel, which flipping that, and it's like, oh yeah, of course, like a heel, like it's dumb, cowardly heel. Like his mom's going out there to be like, you're being too mean to my boy. It's like, yeah, that's what a your old chicken shit heel would do.
It's a very Buff Bagwell thing.
Yeah. I thought it's like this is Judy Bagwell all over again. Like what's going on? But then Jimmy Valiant comes out, and I would also say this.
And Jimmy Valiant, is Jimmy Valiant who's still mad about the Battle Royal that just had happened earlier on the show.
Yeah. Jimmy Valiant, and I have to say this because I really have only seen Jimmy Valiant from Crockett in the mid to late 80s. His 1,000-year feud with the Paul Jones Army.
Yeah.
Jimmy, it was Boogie Woogie Man Jimmy Valiant, and he just come out there,
this is handsome Jimmy.
Dancing, shucking, and jiving. And I absolutely hated Jimmy Valiant. I'm like, God, I hate this. Like, God, why do we be subjected to him every week? Truthfully, like now being an adult, like probably because he probably was over, like popped a rate.
No, like, he drew houses too. You could, like, they liked him. They kept him around. Like, he even did house shows well past when he was on TV because you could put him on the C shows and he'd pull a house for you, even in like '88.
Yeah, I didn't get it because I didn't really care for him. But I mean, anyway, this made me be like, oh my God, I like heel Jimmy Valiant because he was just a dick, just going out there like trash talking people, taking poor taking poor Koko's TV. And it's like, here, throwing it on the ground. Like, I loved it. I'm like, damn, I'm into handsome Jimmy Valiant just being a jerk to people. Like, it's fascinating to me.
I didn't love, like, in concept, I'm fine with what they were doing with this segment, but I did not like this lady doing this promo because it was so flat and delivered just not delivered well, and it's just kind of like, and it kept going. It felt like it just kept going, and I'm like, look, you made the point. Go pull the trigger, do the next. No, just oh God. He asked another question, and that was my problem with it. Was like the concept, cool. The execution,
I mean,
for what
it was
was
his
most of
real,
what was on TV. Not cool.
it was his real mom. So I mean,
I know, but
and I mean, I'm gonna say, I am gonna give her mass credit because usually family members don't do anything, and she got physical with the angle because like Jimmy Valiant like pushes her down at like one point,
mhm.
and like, and I mean, she was a champ because like Jimmy Valiant's like calling her fat and stuff. I mean, he's going to town on her.
Yeah.
Like just no holds barred. So Tommy Rich comes out in a white shirt, so we know what's a coming.
We know
We know
what's
what's
coming.
happening.
And like
Yeah.
Jimmy Valiant and Toji Yamamoto just beat the ever loving shit out of him, and like he's bleeding like a stuck pig. You know, they do the faces come out and chase him off, and then Jimmy Hart comes out. This is where I actually think this angle is great. Is Jimmy Hart comes out and he just goes off like, "Where were you guys? Like, why didn't you have my back and stuff?"
Oh yeah.
And then pretty much this is him turning, which is interesting. So these two segments are essentially a double turn, but pretty much
Mhm.
Jimmy Hart goes off on him, and then it pretty much ends with, I think they attack him, don't they?
Yeah, I think so.
And yes.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like this is one I think if you haven't seen Memphis and you want to see if you'd like it, I would highly recommend this segment for like a very distilled down like experience of what Memphis is, because it's wild, it's chaotic, like there's personal issues, like the storylines, like there's it's always interesting with Memphis because there's like three different storylines going on at once here.
And that is something I appreciate about Memphis is they kept stuff happening. And they didn't slow down. They didn't tap the brakes anywhere. They're like, let's keep it going. Let's do stuff.
Yeah.
So
then we're gonna go to the third movie in the Jimmy Valiant Hates Television's saga. So this is Koko Ware defending the TV title against Bobby Eaton. So Bobby does not look like you'd think Bobby Eaton does. He's a brunette in this. He's got very ugly gear because he's got like yellow boots with red tights. And now to the hilariousness, they start wrestling and Jimmy Valiant comes out and smashes the TV and he just leaves.
he just like push it over
Yes.
and smash it on the floor.
Oh God, it was so great. And now the match itself, I loved the match. The match was like almost kind of like a go match.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why did Bobby have a crown?
Oh, I don't know. He might have stole it from Jerry.
He came out like a crown, and then I'm like, what is this? I liked it. Okay.
I would have to watch. It was probably something to razz Jerry or something.
I thought it was a pretty good match. It wasn't the best match we saw in these stuff, but
For a TV match,
and
though, it was.
it's pretty decent. But I also feel it was working more like the angle, the storyline. But I did appreciate it. Thought it was clever because a lot of it was, Koko would would take an advantage or try to get the advantage, and then Bobby Eaton would basically take over or get the advantage because of like shenanigans and interference by Jimmy Hart. A lot of shenanigans going on, which
Yeah.
I thought was fun.
I love Memphis Jimmy Hart. He's such a like little douche.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because he does like the 70s. He has like the shirt like with it opened and like his chest hair like hanging out and stuff. Like he's just such a little twerp.
He looks like a Weasley scumbag manager,
Yeah,
Mhm.
he does.
which is great because that's what he was going for.
Like if you Jimmy Hart in Memphis is a very different animal than WWE.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this was fun. It was like a TV match. I liked it because I'm like, I was thinking like this is kind of like something like I think WWE needs. Is like it was a nice little belt that your younger undercard guys could go out there and work a little long and just like get some experience in and get some like FaceTime with the fans and stuff and kind of show what they could do. I was kind of like, oh, you need like kind of a gimmick belt instead of just like, oh, we have the Intercontinental in the U.S. belt, or like, oh, we have the TNT and the international and the continental title, and they all mean the same thing. Like I kind of miss like gimmicky belts.
WCW having that TV title was great for that. How you do it with WWE the way it currently is, I have no idea.
You'd have to start killing some belts.
Yeah, you really like. Yeah, you'd have to start stripping some belts out in order to pull it off. And I'm gonna be honest, I think AEW kind of needs a hierarchy on their belts. Like which ones like where on the totem pole are these things? Well, obviously the world title. Where's the international fall? In comparison, where does the continental fall to that? Like, we need like they need a hierarchy for it.
Yeah, and I think the continental title really muddied the waters horribly on that.
I'm kind of thinking that the continental should have just the plan is that it's every year they're going to do the Continental Classic again, and then the winner gets the title, I think it is. I think it should just be kind of, it's not that it is a belt you can test for, it's that you get to carry that around because you were the Continental Classic winner for the year.
Yeah, I'd be fine. I'd be fine if that was in belt form, but I lost my...
I agree with the concept. They kind of already, in a way, do that with the Owen Hart Cup.
That's true.
Well, they skipped the year
they
on
don't
that,
really make it. They had the belt, like they have a belt that goes along with it, but the winner doesn't really carry it around, so it's not exactly perfect. But I don't know. I agree. Like I don't know that it really needs a title involved, versus it essentially being what I think it really is meant to be, like the equivalent of AEW's like G1. It's the G1 tournament. Version of it, which I think is fine. Like that's perfectly fine, and you can have bragging rights, and you can do it where it's like the winner. I mean, they could kind of do it with the Owen, I guess now, but you could do it where it's like the winner gets a title shot.
I'd be fine with.
If the Owen gets a title shot at the end, I think having the Continental being like a King of the Ring analog, where it's a moniker you can have, and it's kind of something you use as a push to get someone's momentum going and that sort of thing.
You could give them a belt, just don't have them defend it. Like that's not a problem.
Yeah,
and then they just relinquish it, like in the opening ceremony of like the next year.
I mean, I know they did that with Eddie Kingston, so that they could give Eddie Kingston the 3-belt reign as a way of appreciating him, that sort of. And I understand that, but I would change the rules on the Continental title at this point. It
just doesn't serve a purpose. It's just another belt.
Well, the purpose seems to be twofold. They created a belt because they wanted Eddie Kingston to win, and it was almost like a tribute to Eddie. Here, Eddie, like you deserve to be like a title holder.
Mm-hmm.
One and two, he had signed or was going to sign Okada.
Yeah.
And they want Okada to be a big deal, so it's like they have him with the title belt,
right?
Which they may obviously not do anything with, but it's also like it. And people online sometimes get just stupid, where it's like, oh, people have been really shit talking Okada because like, oh, look, he's a comedy gimmick, like he's not no way special, and it's like you do not really pay attention because one, he's part of like a major group and is featured every week, and they gave him a title purely because they want him to be seen as like he's a big deal. And clearly it's like they have storylines going on and essentially like a face champion, so they're obviously going to they're building to where you're probably going to get Okada as a world title holder, like, or as a main heel or face, I guess, but they're just, it's almost like a placeholder type of thing for him, which you can struggle. You'd be like, oh, place, but that's also AEW, like the embarrassment of riches, where it's like they have at any given point like 5 or 6 guys that could be like the world title holder or the main face or heel. So can't do that. You can really only have like 2 guys in a storyline at once. So,
And I think
kind of have somebody have to do a back burner, but you have to also want to feature them. So what are you going to do with them? They figured out, well, let's put a title on Okada. So
I also
Yeah.
think part of the prestige of a world title that's been lost in the modern era a lot with a lot of companies. But part of the prestige of your title is the people that were in your company that never held it.
mhm.
Like your title should be sought after and rare. And sometimes like a really popular guy shouldn't win your title because like that like adds to the prestige of it. Like I kind of thought I know they did it just because he was leaving, but I kind of thought like in the early days of Ring of Honor, like Punk never getting over the hump against Joe like made the title seem more important.
I don't know the idea of what prestige a belt has. That's complicated to me because it's like what are we saying? Like where does the prestige
But
come from?
if
Feel like
everyone's
there's
held
different
your
ways
world
to do it.
title though, if everyone's held your world title though, what does it mean at that point?
Well, what I was going to say is, even if everyone's held it, how long does it take them to get there? What kind of mountain do you have to climb to get there? Who do you have to beat for it? Like to have. So if we run down the list and everybody that you think could be a world title holder has a 1 month reign, then you have no prestige. But if it plays out over time and there's, I don't know, I'm going to pull a number out of the air, 6 month reigns for these guys where they have multiple challengers, okay, now we've got more prestige to it. I think the prestige is diminished when you hot potato it around.
Well, I want to say that I think there's the opposite of that true that is true though, and I think WWE is guilty of this. Is when everyone that wins the belt holds it for like 6 months to like 2 years, like that also diminishes
Yeah,
the prestige
that's
of the
the
title.
flip side. And unfortunately, I think in the modern era, there are people who have been brainwashed where it's like, oh, every title, if you're fumbled or you're transitional champ, if you hold a title for like less than like 2 years, it's like, come on.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
because
actually, maybe you do hold a title for 2 months, and maybe you are transitional, but transitional is not necessarily bad.
or
Hey,
sometimes
Like
you know what they call a transitional champ while he holds the belt?
the
Champ.
the champ.
or
So
sometimes you just want to test run something, or you just want to keep people guessing, like, and maybe
Yeah,
you do like, hey, like Darby Allin won the title for like 10 days and lost it back, or hey, so and so beat Cody for like 2 weeks for the belt.
So I'm in this place where the idea being, like you said, Darby wins the title, but he only holds it for like 10 days because there's a storyline reason. There's Darby won it off this guy, but Darby like went through so much to hold it that he got absolutely beat to hell, and that happened at we'll say Dynasty, and then on Dynamite, the challenger or the guy who he won it from just comes out and beats the living hell out of him, and then you get to Collision and Darby's gonna do the babyface promo, and he's out there on the ramp, and then the guy shows up and mows him over again. So you go and have the rematch on Dynamite, and the guy wins it back. It's like, well, of course he did, because he's just been beating the living hell out of the guy, and that doesn't hurt anything because the story behind it builds it up.
Or you just have the guy take his, like the world champ just takes his opponent too lightly and pays for it, like by
Sure.
losing the belt, and then he seriouses up and like goes back to it. Like I think that like you got to keep people guessing at some points.
Yeah.
And
I'm of the opinion that there's a certain thing to having rules that you follow whenever it comes to sort of stuff, unless you don't. You know, it's the best example that I can think of for an analog was in theater. One of the ground rules is never turn your back on the audience unless you do to make a point. And when you do that to make a point, then it's special because you don't see it otherwise. It's something they never do, but there's a reason you're doing it. So, same booking philosophy. If you want to legitimize your belt, then you have guys who hold it for a longer stretch, unless they don't. I realize that's part of my thought process that I had not articulated out loud.
Yeah.
So I wanted to double back on it.
So we're gonna go. So those are like 79, 80. So we're gonna stay in 80. So this next part is, so if you don't know your Memphis history, so Jerry Lawler broke his leg, I think playing softball or something, in 80, and then he tried to come back too early, and I think he broke it again. So there's a big chunk of time that Jerry Lawler is gone, and they're desperately trying to like do whatever they can to keep the houses from like just tanking horribly. So this leads to some interesting decisions, and this culminates in a match that is not on tape, which upsets me greatly. But so they decided to bring in Thesz for a run. So Thesz in 1980 is 62 years old. There is supposedly a match he has with Wayne Ferris at one of the Mid-South Coliseum shows that is not out there, which makes me sad. But the one that really makes me upset is, so he and Billy Robinson had a match at the Mid-South Coliseum that is not on tape, which is interesting. So this is so the first match we're gonna do is so this is labeled on YouTube because it says Thesz versus Buzz Sawyer. It's not Buzz Sawyer. It's Terry Sawyer, whose nickname is Buzzsaw.
Buzzsaw, yeah.
Yeah.
Which confused me because when I saw this on YouTube, I watched the match. I'm like, this Sawyer, like, wow, this is Buzz Sawyer. He looks nothing like he would initially look, but it's not him.
Yeah. I mean, Buzz Sawyer, if you see him in like Georgia in like 79, 80, does not look like Buzz Sawyer, but it is Buzz Sawyer.
Yeah, but he definitely doesn't look like this. Like, it's facially not the same, physique not the same. So
yeah, and then the second match is also it's Thesz taking on a jobber. I think it's like David Oswald or something. So
it's pretty clear that he's taking on a jobber in that match.
Yeah, so this is we're gonna just do a 2-for-1 on this. So this is, what did you guys? So this is probably both of your first experience with Thesz, and like Thesz at 62. So what were your thoughts?
Early 60s.
He was 62, yeah. 61 or 62. So being your first experience to him and like kind of giving him leeway because of his age, what did you guys think of like someone that is like was a living legend when he was wrestling, doing this?
I was impressed by his physique, just because he at 62, and I mean, time marches on, time stops for no man. So he definitely had some like old man.
His hair was like the worst thing that betrayed him.
I mean, yeah, like he had like the side, but I mean the hairline started like way back here.
Yeah.
But he also had some of that stuff that older people get, where it's like the like legs and the arms like start looking a little like thinner or gaunt.
Yeah, he lost some muscle mass.
But he lost some muscle mass essentially. But he was in fantastic shape for his age. Like I try to keep myself in shape. When I'm 62, if I look like in that decent of shape, that good of shape, I'd be like, damn, I'm like taking good care of myself.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I thought was really fascinating is that like he moved well, like
really well, like insane. And
there, sorry to cut you off, but people who are older, like I think obviously a lot of factors come in, like your diet, your exercise routine, your athleticism, but
genetics.
There's some, genetics. There are people though who they can be like in their 60s and they already seem like they're hobbling along their 60s, who are like this, who are like Thesz is moving like he really shouldn't be moving this well, this crisp, this fast,
and
necessarily. Not that he's like hobbling with a cane. Yeah. I look, like non sequitur, but like my mother-in-law just turned 70. Like it's like my wife and I, much younger than her. It's like, how do you have the energy to like do all the stuff that you do in a daily basis. Because when she comes here to visit, she's up at like 5 a.m. and like she'll run us into the ground practically doing the stuff that she does. And it's like, how do you do it? It's like genetics, active lifestyle, whatever. But Thesz looked good. He looked like he could go. Like if he was obviously older, but if you put him, I know you said Billy Robinson, but if you put him with like if you had put him with a guy who was like a star in Memphis or like an up and comer guy, like someone in his like 20s, 30s, even, like he could probably have like a really fantastic match with them.
Yeah, because there's the thing you
He's
get
good.
with older guys where, we're getting really in the weeds with this, but like you can tell by like the way they move, like their footwork and stuff. Like you can just tell when they're washed, and like he was like, if you had said he was 48 years old, I would have believed you.
In watching this is not my first time watching Thesz, but it's my first time watching a fair amount of Thesz. And my takeaway from this is based on watching him, like he's working that older style, that line that I was talking about that happened in the 80s. And I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. So he's very much working that style, but it's like Matt said, it doesn't seem like he's lost a step. He's still very capable. The thing that I love, though, is in watching this, you can tell he knows full out what he's doing every time, and you do not want to try and screw with him out there, because he'll jerk a knot in you so fast you won't know what happened. Like, there's just that underlying of like, Lou is working with you. Lou is happy to be working with you. Don't screw it up, kind of thing. Even at 62, yeah.
Could you imagine being that David Oswald guy? You're just coming in to do a job for like $20. Like, hey, you're working with Thesz, and you're like, what?
And it's gonna be on TV. I can have a recording of me working a match with Thesz.
Yeah.
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 And go out there, you're gonna work Thesz. He's just gonna beat you up for like 3 minutes and go home.
He has a very understated charisma to him too, because there's some stuff he did, like, because you think of Thesz, you don't think of like old style wrestlers like doing emoting stuff, but I really liked when he was doing like, so the first match with Sawyer's kind of just them doing like an amateur bout, and I liked when they went to do a break in the ropes and Sawyer kind of did that whole, where you kind of just give him a little tap on the chest. And Thesz really didn't like that.
Oh, no.
Like, Thesz got a little hot about that.
I think the commentary even mentioned that, where it's like, don't. Yeah. Basically, roundabout way of saying, like, what? Don't poke the bear.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about a guy who has, like, decades of experience here. And he's a professional. He wants to have this, like, amateur, but if you start riling him up, like, don't presume that just because he's been around the block a lot and he's older that he's not going to like tune you up.
Yeah, and I like that. And I liked how that led to, they did a couple minutes later where he gets him in the corner and he does the break, and he makes a point of he just breaks it clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I was kind of waiting after when they did that clean break and the guy does the chest slap. I was kind of waiting for them to do a break, and then Thesz, like they go apart and Thesz just goes right across the face, but it never happened. Yeah. I was kind of waiting for that, because I was like, come on, is it? And he doesn't do it. I'm like, okay, he's showing him up by being the consummate professional.
Yeah. Now, if he was working heel in like the 50s, he might have done that, but not in this situation.
Sawyer would have that in this situation. It would have been Sawyer earned it. Like Sawyer getting slapped, Thesz would still be the face because he earned it by being a dick first.
Now, I didn't like how this match ended, though, because he wins by split decision. I really didn't like how they did the judging thing. I thought that was too convoluted, and they should have just done a match. Like, the crowd was interested, but like I think they just were kind of like, feh. Now, I will say in the second match, though, what I like, though, is so he keeps a really good tempo, and it's one of those things like we always joke about the indie vets that just want to work the leg for 15 minutes.
No, not the leg, because if it was the leg, they'd have to get down on the mat. They want to work the arm.
Oh, the arm. So even when Lou Thesz is doing mat work, like he never sits still for more than like a couple seconds. Like he's always jockeying. Like when he's selling, he's always doing stuff. Like Thesz is always like in some level of motion in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to say looked fucking awesome when he did it, and I hadn't seen him do it in a long time. That backdrop suplex he does is awesome.
He just grabbed the guy and here we go. And the guy is like, oh crap, this is happening.
But it looked great. Like I thought that looked great for a suplex.
I have to keep in mind that it's kind of a different era thing. It looked great, but to use it as a finish comes out of that different era mentality. You were saying about being on the mat. The times Thesz where he's kind of got the knuckle lock going, but then flips himself up and he's using his feet to hook the other guy's thighs, so he's making the other guy support his entire body weight. It's like that kind of agility and movement nobody talks about someone doing when they're like, well, back in the day they used to. It's like, we're gonna back in the day this? Is that what we're gonna do?
Yeah.
Because you ain't gonna like this. But yes, I'm sorry. I digress.
I agree with that. Like, and it wouldn't be like, oh, I've got the arm. Like, I'm bored. I'm gonna, twist this around and pick an ankle or something. Like, he was doing a lot of stuff, and I thought it was interesting because it's one of those things you start watching more when you're watching this, like as us, because there are things you start looking for. So I was kind of watching him, like, huh, he's not blowing up at all. Like, he's not even breathing hard.
There was when I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, someone asked our instructor, they're like, well, okay, so what's it like going up against like one of the really big names? And he said, here's the frustrating thing. Because, I mean, obviously, he'd take any one of us apart if we wrestled with him, right? He said, the thing that he said, I knew full well when I got on the mat with Hoist Gracie that he was going to tap me out. That wasn't the point. He said, the thing that pissed me off is I couldn't even get the guy to breathe hard. Which means that Lou at 62, still had such conditioning that his heart rate was steady and he wasn't even breathing hard through that whole match.
If you read stories of like beer league hockey guys, they'll be like, yeah, some guy that like was like 52 and played one NHL game came in and he just wrecked all of us without even trying.
Mm-hmm. There's a certain level of skill. You get to a certain point that what was it that Mickey said in Rocky? He said the last thing to go is a man's punch. It's like the skill is still there. Maybe you can't do it as much or as strong as you could, but when you've got the skill, it's still there. It's still tucked away in there somewhere. I can throw a really good roundhouse kick 2 or 3 times before, my hip or my knees start hurting.
Well, that's what I tell people about being 43 is like, well, it's not as bad as you think. Like, I'm like, I can do everything I could do at 20. It's just going to be what the next day looks like. But like the day of, like, I can do everything I could do when I was 20. And like, honestly, I eat better now and I'm in better shape. So it's probably easier than when I was like 28. But yeah, the next day I'm going to be sore as hell. Versus when I was, young and stupid.
Yeah.
So this is going to be, we'll go to the riot next. So I just threw this in because it was fun, but this is just the studio riot. So we had Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, I think Tojo was in there. Why am I blanking on everyone?
The Nightmares.
Yeah,
Steve Kern.
Steve Kern.
Bugsy McGraw.
Yes, that was the one. I was like, oh, it's a Bugsy McGraw appearance.
Bugsy McGraw is up there for me. Is like just terrible.
Yeah, I'm not.
Not Chief J Strongbow. Terrible.
No, because
and I should probably like Jimmy Valiant more than I like Bugsy McGraw. Bugsy McGraw is pretty bad.
Yeah, he's not my favorite either.
But he was just there, like participating in the brawl.
But this
and it was just
mayhem.
Fun. It was just a fun brawl. Yeah, it was just mayhem. Like just people emptying out and just throwing each other. And poor Lance Russell, just like so disappointed. just confounded by all this. Come on, guys.
But I think this brawl.
Jerry, come on, Jerry.
I loved
Jerry, you're
wasn't
ruining
this-
the set, Jerry.
Yeah, the fact that he's hearing that and I'm hearing Jerry in the exact same tone as "Oh, come on, Terry" again. It took me out because I was laughing so hard.
I just think there's.
He's not gonna be here. He's not gonna be here because he's a goddamn cow. It's like, come on, Terry, we can't use this. Just Lance Russell's just like,
Yeah.
Shane spoken. Oh, he's here.
I'm gonna steal. I'm gonna
Crush
steal
it.
Jerry's
You're right.
crown.
Yeah.
I think though this brawl though I included it because I think this is like distinctly like something that Memphis does better than anyone else, and it's not even close. Just like the pure chaos and like mayhem of a brawl.
I love a locker room clearing brawl because, to me, a good brawl reinforces the suspension of disbelief. The whole locker room clears out and there's this huge brawl going and all these guys are fighting. Basically, the people who are feuding start pairing off and beating on each other because, of course, they do. And I love it because it keeps me, it's like this spills out because the tensions ran high enough. And then, the fight just kind of keeps going, keeps getting added in and stuff. I love it. I love seeing that. And we've seen it more in Memphis than we have in other places.
It's yeah. I feel like Memphis was really good about the brawl. Like we've seen more Memphis now. And it does make me want to watch, like we've talked about it, and I think we are gonna hopefully do it, but maybe take like a year in a promotion, and we've discussed internally, like behind the scenes folks. We've talked about maybe doing like a year of Memphis, but I think there is a certain like grittiness. The whole point of like of pro wrestling is that you're suspending disbelief because it's not real, it's fake fighting, it's what have you, but you're supposed to suspend disbelief to believe, wink and a nod, that this stuff is real. And it's a little easier, in my opinion, to do that when you have stuff here that almost like blurs the line, where it's just mayhem. Like, it almost seems like a riot has broke out. So like that does in some way like blur the line, makes it a little bit easier to suspend disbelief because it's just chaotic. But at the same time, sometimes this stuff is also like, it goes past like, this is like, oh, it's like a real fight, a riot, whatever. And just, there's also, to me, like a humor factor in it, because it's just like it's this big brawl and it's fun and everything. But you also have like the nightmares, like two dudes in like masks. It's like, this is a real riot, like with two dudes in masks just running around, like,
And one of them is
hitting each other, or like two Asian guys just running around, Japanese guys, like obviously here on excursion. It's like they're running around like throwing chairs at people. It's like, this is just absolute insanity. Like, how
I wish in this brawl at some point we had just panned over and the dude looks at the camera and pushes the TV over. I know it would have been anachronistic, but I would have died.
In the corner, it's like,
He just standing.
you, Koko.
He's hitting this dude. He's hitting this dude, and he's standing next to the table. And he looks over. There's a TV. And he looks over, and just pushes it off. I would have died, but it would not have made sense in context.
I also like with that brawl though. We could probably watch that out of context and go and look and probably guess what like a good portion of the Mid-South Coliseum card was going to be that Monday.
Yeah, because it's all the running feuds are being showcased as this happens.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, Bugsy McGraw's probably here for like a run with Jerry because that's who he was brawling with, and yeah, I quite enjoyed that. So now, do you guys want to do? Do we want to do the title match as like the main event, or do we want to do the tag? Do we want to do the tag and then the title match, or do you want to do the title match next?
I I think tag and then title match.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
agree with that.
So the tag is not Memphis. It said at the end of Nashville, and I'm guessing based on timing. I'm guessing this is probably 70s, not the 80s. So this is Jackie Fargo and Roughhouse Fargo versus Don Duffy and Crazy Luke Graham. So if you're kind of new to the concept of the Fargos, so the idea of Roughhouse Fargo, he was Sonny Fargo and he reffed in Mid Atlantic. So you'll know him from other stuff if you ever see his matches. But so the idea was when Jackie Fargo got into trouble and he needed like the big guns, he would drive to North Carolina and check Roughhouse out of the insane asylum and bring him for the matches. So that's kind of what's going on here. And
I think in real life they're real life brothers, right?
yeah, I
Like
believe
Street
so.
Brothers, I think. Yeah.
Because there's like it's him and I think Don. I think there's a Don Fargo. There was like the fabulous Fargos though. So there's a couple of
Yeah,
Fargos.
Don Fargo, I not actually like blood related. He was just, he was a kayfabe relation. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is the first time I ever seen Roughhouse Fargo. I heard that was the scenario. Like Jackie Fargo would, get in a feud with guys, and then they'd work up to where it's like he's in a feud with like a couple guys, or at least one guy, and the other guy has a buddy. So it's like, I need backup. So they build up to this match where it's like, it's him and Roughhouse. And hearing all that backstory, I thought that Roughhouse would just be like this like crazy insane gimmick. And I guess in some respects it is, but instead of it being like I'm violently insane, he's more like to me it's almost like I'm like a bushwhacker's wacky crazy.
It came off as kind of
like
silly.
Yeah, almost like Three Stooges slapstick
Yeah.
crazy. Like, because he's like running around doing stuff with the heels, and it's more like comical than it is like violent, like blood, just a bloodbath, this crazy lunatic asylum escapee or whatever. Like he's more, it was more wacky, which had I guess a certain charm to it. And I mean, who can we argue like years after the fact, like they would consistently do like good business.
Yeah, it worked.
Like doing these. Yeah.
He's
one
wearing
thing
Go ahead, man. I'm sorry. No, it's fine.
Well, I was just gonna like getting ahead of myself. Like there was one spot that was like towards the very end of the match that I did think was funny, is that Roughhouse gets a chair and he's just hitting everyone with a chair, but then he also hits the ref with a chair. To me, like that actually was like a funny spot. It's like,
yeah,
the heel gets it and the other heel gets it, and now the ref, and it's
you
like,
get it too.
I'm like, it's like, dummy, like come on. Like, so that I think obviously that was for comedic effect, but
Yeah.
I thought actually was like a well done comedy spot, because it was like hamper. It's wacky. It was a lot of wackiness, but it's also like, oh, look at this like crazy dummy. Like he just like clocked the ref because he's just having fun hitting people with hard objects. But what are you gonna say?
In watching this, like he's just wearing boots and tights, and
Yeah.
I swear in my head, and I don't know what I had to base it on, but I would have that summoning Roughhouse Fargo to come in here and help out, and he's going to go, like, I would have expected in my head more like running wild, like, hammering on people, and then do something weird as kind of an interlude, which I'd heard stories about. I would have expected him to be wearing overalls, or like if they wanted to go full bore with it, white pants and like an undone straight jacket, but he's on people. But he's just like, nope, I wear tights and I run over here and I hit you, and then I pop up on I sit down at the table and put my feet up, and I'm like, maybe at the time they're like, okay, that's goofy enough that we like it and we're good with it. I just expected the dial to be turned way up, way higher, and maybe that's just bad expectations on my part.
I think sometimes he's a little more aggressive, like attacking people, but I've only seen like clips when I watch the TV. If
this was
around.
like, because in the early 90s, they totally would have like ripped off Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking when I was watching this. I was thinking when I was watching.
Stop screaming, Clarice. It's like,
I was thinking, man, if this was today, like 3 of these guys would never get a chance in this industry, and the least interesting guy in the ring, which was Don Duffy, like is the one that would get like looks because of his body. But I was like, and I was also thinking like, well, these guys that really cut their teeth in like the '60s and the '70s, like when you watch this, like the big gestures are just so natural. Because Jackie, I mean, I've seen Jackie before, and I enjoy Jackie Fargo's stuff, but he's really super charismatic.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
It's one of those. It's like, well, you know, I get it, but then I'm also kind of like, I don't know. I wanted more. I wanted more crazy. I wanted more wacky.
They cut this thing to shreds, but because like there was one point where the guy's like, oh well, we need to save film, so we're gonna go away, and they come back for like literally 20 seconds, like, oh, we need to save film, we're gonna go, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the main event of the night is actually a pretty rare occurrence, because usually they had like Nick Bockwinkel, the AWA, coming in for Memphis, but this is Ric Flair defending the NWA world title against Koko Ware, and Dusty Rhodes is hanging out at ringside.
Yeah, I that actually was interesting to me because
Mhm.
like Dusty was Coco's second, and early on, like Flair was really not enjoying that. He was really upset that Dusty was just hanging out outside. But Dusty didn't actually have really any real interaction in the match.
He was basically playing hype man outside.
Yeah,
and that's fine
too, because I think because Lance had kind of mentioned that he had given him some coaching.
Yeah, it builds into the backstory a bit.
But it was
So
like, I was gonna say,
go
like,
ahead.
when people want to say like Ric Flair works like the same match, or they try to like kind of detract from him a bit, like this is the kind of stuff I point to say like, no, this is why he's the GOAT.
It's why he's one of them, because I'm sorry, I just had a mental lapse. We're Flair Coco, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. The course of this match, Flair displays not only the I am the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Ric Flair, you know, you are lucky I'm in the ring with you. He also sells huge for Coco. And it is not like over the top, like, oh God, I'm selling. So it is, he is selling for them, and he begs off, and he goes from, like, I guess effectively big leaguing him to, oh God, this guy might get me, and then getting away with it. And Flair could consistently do that with people. You know, he does it great here. And I love it, because it's just so great to watch.
And I think it's I looked at pictures because the ref was like, that doesn't look like a Memphis ref, and I was like, oh, it's Tommy Young, is what I came away with. And then just I could tell by his hairline. I looked up pictures, but the ref is really good in this. Like, we bitch about the refs a lot, but I really enjoy his positioning. Like, if you want to see good reffing, this is a great match for it, because his positioning is always impeccable. I liked. So the end is pretty much Bill Dundee interferes, and then Ric Flair rolls him up, and Koko gets his foot on the ropes, but Flair like pulls it off. But what's perfect is the way the referee positioned himself. He can't see the leg, and it makes absolute sense why he would count the way he did.
Mm-hmm. I love it. It is so.
This was obviously it was a really good match. Like there were little things early on that I really liked. I liked first off, the crowd was like super hot throughout all of it. Koko was they hyped up that he was. They initially hyped up the announced team with Lance Russell and someone else who I couldn't recall who it was, but it was almost like if you want to like have them be like, you should be impartial, but Lance Russell kind of almost became like a total homer here, where when Koko would get near falls, like Lance would get all excited, and it's like, he's gonna do it, like, and whoever the color commentator was, like the second guy on there, he even was like, I don't like, you shouldn't be prejudiced as an announcer, but like I've known Koko a long time and I'm really rooting for him. And it's like, it was interesting because it actually, I mean, again, should you be impartial? Like, yeah, I guess, but obviously Koko was like a hometown guy versus the national world champ, but they were rooting for Koko, and Koko, it was almost like a star-making performance in some respect. They're obviously building Koko. I mean, the guy earlier on won the TV title. Like clearly he was being pushed and built as like a star, an up-and-coming star in the promotion, in the territory. But he did really well. He did little things that I really appreciated that were kind of, I feel, almost different and more like savvy for like an up-and-coming face, where they were having like the strike exchange between each other. Koko gets the better of it. Flair does the whole classic, like Flair flop down the ground. What does Koko do? Like a lot of faces would just be like, yeah, like play into the crowd, like, yeah, I got him. Like, look at him, I punched him down. Koko didn't do that. He didn't play to the crowd. Like Flair goes down for a flop. Koko's like, oh, immediately goes down, like rolls Flair over, goes to pin him to win the title. 2 count, obviously, but
Right.
that was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's. I just said a minute ago, like suspending disbelief, like that kind of suspends disbelief. You want to be like, this is a real competition. It's like, okay, this guy, like, he sees an advantage, he's going to immediately try to take advantage of that situation. Really, actually, well done. Like, it was a subtle thing. Like, I almost feel like you have to like be watching wrestling a certain amount of time to kind of appreciate this, because a lot of the guys, they play the crowd or whatever, and that's not a wrong thing, because again, like, that's part of the job too. You're playing to the crowd, especially if you're a face. Like, you're trying to get the crowd on your side. But it was something that was savvy. It's like, no, he's not. This is no BS. Like, he's like, I'm here to win the title, and they played that angle. Talking a lot about Flair, certain things we said about Flair. We talked about Flair, how Flair, national champion, huge star. And this was 85. So, I mean, this is after like the Starrcade where Flair has beaten Race. Like, it's the passing of the torch. Like, he's well established as like the guy traveling around the country doing stuff
on TBS.
But we know that Flair, yeah. But we know that Flair, we talked about it. Flair would love to go into like smaller promotions, and not that Memphis was like, I mean, I guess you would consider it regional. Yes, it was, but big promotion, big territory. But Flair would love to go, and he would love to like, let me go and have like 20, 30, 60-minute matches with dudes and put them over in every way but winning. Would put him over, it's like, you're going to make them a star. You're going to make them like have a great performance. He clearly did that with this match with Koko. He gave Koko like a ton of offense, even to the point, and I noted this too, where like he let Koko put the figure 4 on him, and he just like going crazy, like, oh my God. And another thing, great announcing that I loved, where Koko put it on it, and because this is Flair's move, established move, Lance Russell immediately is like, wow, Koko's not experienced using this move, so I don't know how it's going to work out for him. But he's trying to put it on Flair to get the, and it's like that a little thing like that, it actually adds so much, because it's like, Flair, this is Flair's devastating move. It's what he wins so many matches with. He puts guys away with. It's his move. Another guy's going to turn it back on him, but he's not experienced, so don't know if that's going to come out for, and it didn't. But it established the move where it's like, Flair's the master of this move, so that's why he wins with it. Another guy's using it to good effect, but it's not the same effect because he's not the master of it like Flair. It's like you put both guys over with this like little like little line of commentary. You mentioned like the finish. The finish like was designed to put both guys over. Flair, dirtiest player in the game, wins the match, but Koko gets his foot on the ropes. You see, like, oh, he shouldn't have been. The pin shouldn't have been counted.
Mm-hmm.
So just a masterfully done match, like just
Yes.
a really good match.
Yes.
I also liked Flair. You can see Flair kind of adapted some stuff to how the crowd was reacting. They got a really big pop because they were kind of doing the pushing thing when Koko pushed him down.
Oh yeah.
But I liked what I really liked in this match though was there were a lot of Flairisms, like he was doing a lot of his like Flair stuff, but it didn't feel like it was the point of parody or satire at that point. It still felt fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It just seemed more like Flair's usual showboating. Until obviously Koko started getting the better of him, and then like that all went away. That there was almost like a desperation that started to set in.
He got
Mhm.
progressively more angry, I would say.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if you guys caught this, which was interesting to me, like when I heard it, especially like in the times nowadays, but and this kind of goes where like they were really like hyping up Koko, like really trying to establish him. But there was a throwaway comment that I think Lance Russell made where it's like, oh, Koko, like I think they said like at least in the Memphis territory, like Koko, like one of, if not the first, like African American
No, he said that.
or
Yeah, he
like
said
wrestler,
that.
like yeah, like challenging for the title. And it's like again, this is like a just a throwaway line and they'd make a big deal out of it, but it's also like that's actually yeah, like the diversity inclusivity where it's like in the 80s, which obviously less I guess progressive or different times, but they were clearly like establishing this guy and it's like his race didn't matter except for the fact that they're hyping. It's like, yeah, look at this. Like this guy could be a big deal and great monument that he's like actually like challenging for the title. Didn't win it, but they booked him so strong. Like this, I love this match was a really just a fantastic match. Like I don't know where I'd rank it in terms of like like stars, snowflakes.
I
Um,
think I had it at 3.5 or 3 3/4.
I think that's fair. Like it's a good match. It's probably one of the best matches, if not the best match I've seen Koko in, which is not a knock on him. It's just that most of his career, like most everyone else, is that I've seen of him is his WWF stuff in the 80s or early 90s, which there's not a ton of great stuff to work with just because that was the times. Like he wasn't going to be having these type of matches with guys
No.
in the WWF in the 80s or early 90s. He had some good tag stuff with Owen for the brief time they did like high energy in the early 90s, but like yeah, he wasn't doing like 25-minute matches with Ric Flair in the WWF, but this was a really really good match.
Tony asked how Koko's doing these days. Shad and I actually saw him at a convention 2 years ago.
Mm.
2.5
2 or
years ago.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 sounds right.
And he's a real trip if you see him at conventions. Like he's a talker.
It was funny because Brad had gotten like the big package deal for everybody, and I was just kind of hanging out with him. And he's in line with Koko, and they're talking, and he looks at me and goes, "What's your deal, man?" And I'm like, hey, he's the one that got the package deal. I was just letting you guys talk, that sort of stuff, and just hanging out with my friend. And he goes, "Oh, get the hell over here, man. Talk to me a minute." Yeah, all right. He did not. It was a really cool experience to see someone who was just happy to be talking with people.
Yeah, definitely. But he's really interesting. Like watching this stuff, I was like, well, one, he's like the perfect underdog because his height like really really
true.
gives him like that immediate underdog look. I would say his comebacks are really good. Like he throws a really nice punch. Like I didn't realize like he threw such nice punches.
Oh yeah, he does. I also love. Look, I love the Ghostbuster. I just, you didn't get to see it much, but he just did such a good. It might be my favorite brainbuster to watch people do.
You can watch him kill that jobber with it over and over again.
You can, but he always did such a good. It looked like it killed somebody, but he just did such a good job. Damn it, Matt! You completely threw me with the Python reference in the chat. He has ceased to be. He's expired and gone to meet his maker. He's a stiff bereft of life. He rests in peace. If you hadn't nailed him to the perch, he'd be pushing up the daisies. His metabolic processes are now history. I can do the whole thing. I'm going to stop now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, Tony had asked about Frankie, and it's been a long ass time. There's an article you could look it up. He tragically died in a house fire. Like, I think it's been like early 2000s. I think is when it happened.
Yeah, it's a shame. But
because Frankie's in Beyond the Mat for a couple minutes.
Yeah, he's in there with yeah, I remember that because the Koko's talking about it. He's like, I could hang it up and let Frankie go and everything, but I can't do that. And yeah,
so I think this is an interesting array of stuff. I think
It's eclectic. It's an eclectic mix of stuff from Memphis.
I picked it just because I saw the Lou Thesz match. I'm like, oh, we should do like Lou Thesz stuff.
Thesz is interesting because obviously the guy was capable, and they had the title on him for a long time because he could handle his business in case something happened. But there's part of me that honestly, I wish there was some footage where somebody did try something just to see Thesz be like, nope, and just tie somebody in a knot. But I suppose that's kind of a weird thing to be hoping for.
Yeah. I wish that Billy Robinson match was on there though, because I mean, Billy Robinson's also one of those like shooter guys. So that's it for this episode, and probably we might as well just do, since we're in I am gonna say, since we're in Memphis, we might as well stay there and do the second episode of Macho Man in Memphis. So that's gonna be and the segments that it's gonna be his match with Austin Idol. I think that's Austin. That'd be Austin Idol's like show debut for us. The loser leaves town with Jerry Lawler. There's a Lawler and Macho tag versus King Kong Bundy and Rick Rude, and there's probably a couple other things we could do. We already did the Adrian Street stuff like way back in the day. So that is it for this week. Thank you everyone for watching. Thanks Tony for stopping by and saying hey. And thank you for noticing my X-Men pictures in the background.
Maybe at some point, whenever I get froggy enough, I'll turn the green screen into different backdrops for different shows, just
That
for
one,
kicks. But
the red one is the D&D Player's Handbook from like second.
Which one? Second
Let
edition.
me see. No.
Oh.
It's the Dungeon Master's book, probably from just regular D&D, not advanced.
Okay. I have a from an edition I never played, but this is straight up a binder like a branded binder for it.
Oh, I've seen those. I see those at half price every now and then.
Man, I don't see anything at half price except outdated Warhammer 40K codex.
Because I'm so close to Ohio State, sometimes stuff pops up. Not like it used to, but like every now and then, like you'll get like the TSR Marvel system pop through, like a bunch of the adventures. Like I see 2E stuff a lot. Like I actually looked into like it was brand new when Pathfinder 2E came out. I found it at half price like a month after it came out. So I got like those expensive ass books for like $20 a piece.
Nice. I actually got a hardcover edition of a brand new Dresden Files book that way. I don't know how. I don't know what happened, but there it was, so I grabbed it.
Tony mentioned Ravenloft, so he has good taste.
Oh.
The Domains of Dread.
Yeah. Oh,
The Domains of Dread. You
something.
know, that place where where the Dreadlord has complete and utter power over his demiplane, and yet the demiplane torments him all the time. Yeah.
I actually was a fan of Eberron, like when that came out, because they did some really interesting stuff with it.
I don't have any Ravenloft like game stuff because I never really like was necessarily like into a lot of game stuff, but I forget how I think it's because like there was a bookstore that was closing or running some sort of sale, but I literally have probably a dozen like Ravenloft like novels.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
Yeah, I have like a ton of these. Literally, like, I have like a dozen of them that I just buy like as a set. Some store was like running and they're like, this is new. Like I haven't even read this. It's like there isn't even like wrinkles on the spine.
I have a bunch from.
I'll read it at some point because I have like so much free time to just read. But anyway, like I have all this stuff. Yeah.
Have you finished Eye of the World yet?
No. It's because like I just don't have time to do a lot of reading. I'm like halfway through.
I need to get into book 5.
You know what? I'm gonna start recording the audiobooks of that just for you, so you can have free audiobooks of it.
Will you do voices? Like do different voices for the I'm like whoever.
They're
I'll think about it.
They just redid those with a new reader, and I don't.
Yeah, Rosamund Pike did. I know she did Out of the World.
Oh, really?
I don't know if she did any others. Yeah.
I think
I said that as a joke, but back in the day, and at this point it's been like over a decade, but like I actually, when I was younger, I think I read like the first 4 books of Harry Potter, but I actually went through and I listened to all of them that were recorded by I think the British actor is Jim Dale. I think that's right. But he recorded all the Harry Potter stuff, and it's almost like when my daughters are older, maybe I want to do that. But the audiobooks for Harry Potter are really great, and he does different voices for all the characters.
Yeah, he sounds like
actually
he actually sounds like exactly like the Haggard from the movies. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's actually fantastic. It's almost more like a theatrical performance. Not theatrical as in like movies, like as in like theater, like performance. And he did a fantastic job. Again, like those audiobooks at this point are like over a decade old. They're older. So he did a fantastic job. So
the problem I have now. The problem I have now is like one will come out that I want to read, and it's like read by Will Wheaton, and I'm like, well, I will not be reading that.
I used to listen to a lot of audiobooks, but it's many years ago when I could listen to them as I like walk my dog, but I don't have a dog anymore.
Yeah.
And now it's like when I listen to I may listen to podcasts during the day as I'm working, or if I may when I go run, but it's also like it's not productive for me because I have to actually focus on it, and I feel like I can't focus to the level it needs to be like to actually follow the plot. I mean, like I would listen. I try to, and it's like let me listen to like 2 minutes of a book, and then I will pause it and like, oh, I'll think about what was just said, and then it's like as I'm thinking, like 10 minutes has passed. It's like, oh, now I'm like a third of the way through my run. So
World War Z is an excellent audiobook. You need to get the unabridged though. Don't get the abridged because they each because it's an oral history, so each chapter is essentially told by a different person. So they cast a different actor to reach each part of that. And there's like Nathan Fillion's in it. Martin Scorsese does one, but the best one, and you're not going to be shocked. The best character in it, he gets a couple chapters, is Mark Hamill.
Yeah. Mark Hamill, typically awesome doing voice acting stuff.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I do a lot because of my job and stuff. They're a lot different now than they were like a decade ago because there's more money in it now, so you get like better readers. A lot of celebrities do it for a little side cash. Like Michael C. Hall reading Pet Sematary is a good listen if you haven't done that.
So the ones that the audiobook readers I default to are Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. They did the Wheel of Time books. They do the Stormlight Archive books. They just do a very professional, very good job. And so if you see their names attached to anything as any as the audio readers, then you know that it's going to be done well.
Yeah, Death of the Territories is a good one.
That's true. That one's really good.
Except I want to stab him every time pay-per-view and he says PPV, and I'm like, it's pay-per-view. Like, please just say
that. And the other thing that kills me is that he cannot say the word wrestling like a regular person. It's always wrestling, and I'm like, dude, knock it off.
I know. It's a good book though. I wish they would do the.
It is really good.
I wish they would do the NWA one. Because that one's hilarious because you find out like all this like kayfabe stuff. Like they did the world title to make more money, but they never stuck with it. They were always doing like angles where like two people were the world champion because they could get more money from having like two champions. So like all these people that wax poetic about some of that stuff, it's like, no, you need to read this and like see what it was actually like in the 40s and 50s. Because like wrestling has always been full of like short-sighted people just trying to make a quick buck.
Lots of carny.
Yeah.
Always been lots of carny.
So that is gonna be it. So like I said, we're gonna do Macho Man in Memphis next week. We have more Portland on there. We have the 1992 USWA project. We have a cruiserweight project I want to do. Someone just brought it up, and it has been on my list, but I think we might try to do that in the fall. But the 2004 Ted Petty Invitational, which Justin brought up, that might be a couple of shows, but that is like famous for the amount of talent in that tournament at the time.
Oh, wow.
That's like got everyone you could think of that was relevant in 2004. And I think that's kind of what we have in like the near future. So
that's what we have on the list to do.
The list is ever growing. Like when we started this podcast, like we've only been doing this on YouTube for a couple months, but we have like I think 325 episodes of the podcast. And when we started, I was worried we'd run out of content at some point. And let's just say the list has only ever gotten larger because the rabbit holes you run into like are never ending. Like
we can get super granular with stuff too. So this is episode 324 of a weekly podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 5 years worth of podcast listening. If you want a nice backlog to go through.
Well, that is it for the evening. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's been fun as always, and we will catch you next time.